Welcome everybody, my name is Anton and today I wanted to show you how you can connect your Python Django application with MeldRx using its FHIR API. So if you're planning on having some users in your healthcare application that are going to be generating FHIR resources, you need a place to store it, you can use MeldRx for it. Please remember, if you have any questions, do leave them in the comment section. All of the links that I'm going to be using here are going to be available in the description. And as always, if you're enjoying the video, leave a like and subscribe. With that, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm already signed into MeldRx, and a couple of other links that I have here. Because I'm not a Django expert, I am going to be following the documentation to create my application and all of that stuff. The library that I've found that can be used to connect my Django application with the MeldRx workspace using OIDC is this Mozilla Django OIDC library. I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger here. I also have the HL7 FHIR documentation here. I'm just going to be using it for some sample data. I'm going to be using our MeldRx FHIR client library to effectively communicate with the workspace FHIR API. Okay, with that, let's go ahead and start with registering our application. So Django app. This is going to be a provider app, confidential, and let's go ahead, add OpenID. Also, I wanted profile and patient star.star. So patient.star.star means I, as a doctor, I can read, create, delete, manage any patient records that I want. Okay. For the redirect URL of our application, the Django application is generally hosted on 127.0.0.1 without a certificate, port 800. You can modify that, but this library says that the OIDC callback over here, where we process the code for the token, is going to be on this path. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this address, paste it into here, and that should be it. I'm going to take the next step. I'm not connecting to any external AHRs, so I don't need to do anything here. And yes, I do want a workspace. I will say my Django workspace. And I'm going to go ahead and register my application with all of the metadata available to me here. Okay, now that I have my workspace information and my app information, I'm going to go ahead and set up my Django application. I'm going to pop on over to my terminal over here. And I'll create a new directory called Django-app. Okay, I'm going to change my directory into there, clear everything. And first of all, I'm going to use Python to set up a virtual environment. So that should create it. So if I list directories in here, I should just have venv. Now, since this virtual environment is created, I'm going to go ahead and, not Python, but open up PyCharm in this directory, and the rest of the development is going to happen in PyCharm. Go ahead, pop it over here. I'm going to close my terminal and pop over to PyCharm. I'm going to open up the terminal at the bottom over here. We can see that the virtual environment isn't actually activated yet, so I'm going to go ahead and close the terminal. I'm going to search for interpreter in here. And I'm going to go ahead and add a local interpreter. There's going to be an existing one, and just make sure that the path adds up over here. Okay, so inside the Django app, I want the Python interpreter. Click OK. And there we should have it. There is currently nothing in there. We're going to press OK. And now if I open up my terminal, I'll see venv over here, which means PyCharm has figured out that I should be using this virtual environment. Okay. So now let's go ahead and install Django. With Django installed, it's effectively a command line tool. Hopefully you as a Django developer who's watching knows a little bit more about Django than I do. I'm going to go ahead and run this just so you know what version I'm on, which is 5.0.4. I'm going to come back over here and use Django admin start project my site. Okay. Running this, I'm then gonna make sure I cd into my site, clear the terminal, and taking a look at this folder, I have the manage script over here and then the rest of the files over here. Okay. Scrolling down a little bit further, they explain what all of this is. I'm not gonna go over that. I'm just gonna double check that I can run my Django server, I can. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and cancel it. Because I like debugging, I'm going to set up a debugger. So edit configurations. I'm going to add a new configuration for Python. And here at the top, it has selected my interpreter, though I want to be running this managed script. So let's just apply, close this for a second. I'm going to go ahead and copy reference, absolute path, and then edit configurations again. I'm going to actually name this default, paste the managed script into here, and then it was a run server that I want to put in here. So run server, and if you're just curious, it's going to be this command over here that I'm typing here. Okay, let's click apply. Okay, and now I'm going to search for the debug command. So debug, use the default configuration, and this should start the debugger with the rest of the stuff. Okay, so I am confident I can start debugging my application. Let's go ahead and follow the documentation a little bit further to creating an app. Okay, instead of a polls app, I'm just going to name my app. So I'm going to open up the terminal here. I'm going to call this app. Okay, this is going to need me to do a couple of things and do a couple of changes in terms of just copying, pasting stuff from the documentation. So coming back over here, I'm going to be adding my first view. So I will need views.py and putting something like this there. Okay, so let me just copy this whole thing over here. I'm going to go into views, place this here, and remove this stuff at the top. This is the hello world. We can leave it here, although I'm just going to rename this to home. I'm going to add 2 more endpoints. One endpoint is going to be get a user. So we're going to be getting a user, or rather get patient. Over here, this is going to say create patient. All of the requests that we're going to be making from the browser are going to be GET requests. I'm not going to be creating any forms, etc. That is partially why I'm on this HL7 documentation, so I can just go ahead, grab the plain JSON and submit that. Okay. So anyway, I have created my views, home, get patient, and create patient. I'm going to go slightly further down to say I will need a URLs file and register these URLs. So new URLs, paste all of this stuff into here, copy this a couple of times. I have a home path, don't need the braces, get patient, again, no braces, create patient, and I'm gonna just do a little bit of IDE magic to rename stuff really quickly. Rename the index, and here I'll place the same, but I'll just say that one is get and the other one is create. Okay, I'm going to emit patient from the path. Once the URLs are set up in this application, I'm going to need to go to the my site URLs and set this up over there. So I'm just going to take this, go all the way to URLs over here, and paste this here. I'm actually going to put it at the bottom. So it will have to start with /app and look inside the apps module. Okay. We're going to import this namespace from Django URLs include. Okay. So this is what this bit looks like. Coming back over here. And I think this is it for this setup. I'm going to go ahead and debug this application just to double check that the URLs are actually working. So I'm going to open my application, /app and home. And there we have our sample text over here. Okay, cool. So from here on, we want to go ahead and set up our OIDC library here. So I'm going to take the library name and start installing it. For this, I'm going to stop my Django application. So pip install Mozilla Django OIDC. Come back over here, and it is not in a very good order. It says you have to set up this configuration, that, and then somewhere in the middle it says, yeah, you need to register it in the settings over here. So I'm going to do the registration with the settings first. I'm going to grab the name here, close this my URLs, views, close everything. Go to settings py, scroll down to installed apps. and place this over here. Okay. Another thing that it's asking for is this authentication backends. I'm just going to place it over here and remove this bit here. Come back. And now I'm going to go over the settings. So IDC RP client, I'm just going to put all of this stuff at the bottom here. This is the client ID. This is going to be the client secret. I'm going to paste that across in just a second. We also have to set the algorithm for the public key encryption so it can verify the token. It's going to be RS256. So it looks like Django supports 2. We only need 1. And as you're specifying this, you're going to need to specify one of these, either the signing key or the endpoint from which to get the key from. Okay. So other things, surprisingly, this library doesn't use the well-known endpoint. So you're going to have to use it yourself manually, as well as filling out this stuff over here. Okay. I'm going to quickly do a little bit of IDE magic to remove this over here and just make sure that the quote symbols are the same on these lines. You will understand why in just a second. I'm also going to go ahead, paste across these settings over here. And for both of these, I'm going to set that we should return to 800 home, or was it app home? Okay, so after we log in or after we log out, that's where we're going to end up. Okay, other couple of settings that are, well, that are being mentioned somewhere over here. Scope, nope. I'm going to go into settings over here and search for how do I set the scopes. By default, you can see there it was specifying OpenID and email. I'm going to specify the scopes that I have selected. OpenID, profile, and patient star.star. Okay. Another scope that is actually not documented here, their documentation is a little bit outdated. I want to specify OIDC use PKC. So our server uses PKC, so you want to mark this as true. And we also want to store the access token. So that is going to be stored inside the cookie that is going to be generated as part of this authentication session. So we can actually retrieve it later and make our API calls. Okay. So here are the settings that we will have to fill out. Let's go ahead to MeldRx over here. I'm going to grab the app ID, copy that, place that over here, client secret, place that in the client secret. For these endpoints, I'm going to just duplicate the path over here. And on the base path of app.meldrx.com is where our well-known OpenID configuration, okay? And we have the JWKS URL over here, the authorized endpoint, token endpoint, and the user information endpoint, which I'm just going to go ahead and copy from here. So usually what these libraries will do is you just give them your authority URL. They will find this well-known endpoint and they will grab this information automatically. This library doesn't do that, so you're going to have to specify this manually. Okay. So I'm going to select about YAML, select the next occurrences, and just cut out YAML. Get rid of this because all of this just happened to be all in the same order for me. Okay, so JWKS endpoint is this. This is the authorized endpoint, token endpoint, and the user information endpoint. Cool. So we have gone ahead and set up our configuration here. We have connected it through the installed apps and the authentication backend. If I go ahead and let me double check if I'm debugging already. If not, I'm just going to launch it from here. So restart the debugger. The application should start again. I'm going to go over here and refresh. So actually one thing, the new routes should be appearing here because, well, that's what Django does. It says, here are the routes that are available to you if some are missing, or that if you're not hitting one. So inside installation here, where it was saying somewhere in the middle here, yeah, you basically need to add the routes to the URL patterns. So inside my site, we have URLs, and down here for OIDC, we're going to be adding these URLs. Okay, so the application looks to have restarted. I'm going to refresh. I'm going to find OIDC. On the OIDC over here, if I go, I'm going to see there are some other routes here to log out, to authenticate, and the callback. Authenticate is what we want, so I'm just going to go ahead and set authenticate here. And the current issue that we're getting here is that there is no table in the database here. So I'm just going to go back over here to this page, go back to the ID. I'm going to stop the application. So if I would have ran this from the terminal, so Python, it is a manage py around server, I think this actually gives me the error. So I have some unapplied migrations, okay? It also gives me the command to run, so I'm just going to stop it here. And I purely did this just to get the command because I don't know it off by heart. This has created unapplied migrations. I think it creates this SQLite 3 server and the migrations folder, okay? And then it applies them as well. So let's go ahead and restart the debugger. So the server is running again, just collapsing those windows. Just refreshing to make sure that my application works. I'm going to go to authenticate. This is going to redirect me to MeldRx, to the consent screen. Just going to allow access, and I should end up back at home. Okay, so at this point, I'm just going to go to views over here. I'm going to place a breakpoint here, come back, refresh, and I'm not sure why I'm not hitting the breakpoint, so I'm just going to go ahead and restart the application and hit this again. Okay, so with the request over here, there is going to be a session, and under the session you can look into the protected attributes underscore session as a dictionary of values stored. So as part of OIDC, we have an access token stored over here. Okay, to get this access token, we can go to the request variable session and then access it like a dictionary. So IDC access token, just like that, and there's the access token. So if I just replace this over here, we can actually start getting the access token from this home endpoint. So I'm going to press play on here, come back, and here we can see the access token being displayed in the browser. Now that we know that we can get the access token, it's just a matter of adding it to the MeldRx FHIR client library and actually using it. Okay. So let's go ahead and install this. We are going to do it right here. Once this has been installed, I want to go ahead and grab an access token. There are no variables in Python, as you see me just attempt to create there. Okay, so, and no semicolons as well. We have the access token. We then want MeldRx FHIR client. Let's remove about yay much, add a constructor, import this. I'm gonna just call this client. Supply a base address, I think, base URL, and then we have to supply an access token. Okay, actually I think this had the not basic, bearer token, where we supply the base URL and we supply the access token, like that. Okay, the base URL is going to be the address of your workspace. So let's go ahead, copy that, put this over here. I'm going to put these on new lines because everything is just bleeding off slightly. Over here, it's telling me there is an unexpected argument because the parameter is called access token. Once we have the client, we want to go ahead and read a resource type, and resource ID. So resource type will be patient, and resource ID will be an identifier that we get from a request. I believe it's a get, and over here you have to specify what query parameter you want. Okay, so this code over here gets the query parameter, assigns it to the resource ID over here, and this should finally give us a patient. Okay. Let me just name the variable correctly. So once I have the patient, I believe I can have a JSON response import that and pass the patient in there. Okay. This is going to be reading. Before we can read, we will need to create. So I'm just going to go ahead, copy this, paste this over here. And instead of read resource, I am going to create resource. And the second parameter will need to be changed to data. So for this, I'm just going to put these on new lines, data, and here I will need to insert my data. For this, I'm going to go to the FHIR documentation, to the patient, examples, and a JSON payload, right? I've copied this sample a couple of times. I should actually get myself familiar with the patient. Who is this? Jim. What a beautiful name. Come here, Jimmy. So we're just going to paste JSON over here. A couple of things that we're going to need to replace are the Boolean values to uppercase, but generally, well, as you see here, JSON translates very easily to a Python dictionary, okay? And that is what you will have to supply here in the data. Cool. So I think that is it. Hopefully the application has restarted, and let's go ahead and try this out. So instead of home over here, we are going to ask for, let me double check the URLs that I have specified for create. I'm going to create here, and here is the created patient. Here is its new identifier. So when I try to get and I set the ID, I can now read this patient, right? From here on, you can add new endpoints or add your own functionality wherever you need to search the API, to get specific patients, encounters, etc. You would have your own forms to translate that data into FHIR data, and you can store it in the MeldRx backend. And this will be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you get a clearer idea of how you can connect your Django application with a MeldRx workspace and use its FHIR API. As always, thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section. Don't forget to check out the description. The source code will be available there, as well as all the other links to the documentation. Hope you have a good day, and goodbye.